Hello, and welcome back to The Lone Sculptor, Lessons from Quarantine. Welcome back to the couch. Today we're going to be talking about proportion. Woo! Now, there's a lot to say about proportion. We're going to be just looking at the head, and we're going to be looking at it from a profile view. First things first, we want to get sort of an initial head shape down. So we're just going to block in a basic head. Now, if this is new to you, the idea here is that we're creating sort of a ball here, and then we're tacking on a little wedge at the bottom to represent the jaw, and then we've got a sort of neck to give us context. Okay, we'll talk more about the structure of the head another day. So first things first, let's look at just the proportions of our overall head that we're throwing down here. So I'm going to look at its height. So say here is my top of the head, here is my bottom of the jaw, and this here is the distance, the height of my head. So I'm going to check this height against the depth of the head. Okay, so I can take that measurement and I'm going to compare it. I've got it here on my pencil. You can see I'm being quite precise with putting my finger where that line is, putting the top of the pencil to the other line, and I'm going to check it to the depth of the head. Now we want this, you can see it's coming to about there. So we want that to be kind of in this range. We want the depth of the head to be a little bit shorter than the height of it. In reality, this actually varies quite a lot from individual to individual. Some people it's almost equal, the depth of their head to the height of it. Some people it's quite a bit skinnier. So as long as you're within a range, you're probably going to be in a safe place. So I'm going to just make mine a little bit bigger, a little bit more average, like so. Okay, so that's first things first. I've got a general sort of head shape here. Now, the main idea with proportions or with measuring in general is that you want to use a reference that you've already checked that you know is, I'm going to say, true, and you're going to use that to further break up the form. So now that I've checked the height of my head, and I'm saying that's my height, I've checked it to the depth, and I like those two relationships, I can now safely break down this big shape into smaller proportions. Okay, so the first one I'm going to do is by dividing this in half approximately. So I like to just guesstimate, I eyeball it. If you're not so confident in eyeballing, you can double check to see if the guess that you've made is actually halfway or not. So mine could go up a little bit here. Another easy way to guess is you hold this away from yourself, which I can't really do in a video. But holding something farther away from you is going to help you to see it more accurately than when it's like close to your face. Okay, so halfway mark. Okay, so this is one half to there. That's the other half. And the thing that comes along that point is anybody? It's the eye. Okay, so the eye is going to be approximately halfway. Again, the idea with a canon of proportion is that it's actually averages. So there's going to be like a curve of different ratios. So some people are going to have eyes that are lower down in the face, higher up in the face, but the median here is the eyes approximately in the middle of the entire head. Okay, so that's our first exciting proportion. Ding, ding, ding. Second, we're going to go ahead and we're going to break this up even further into thirds. However, for the thirds, we are actually not going to go the entire length of the head. We're going to come down a little bit. I'm going to say that's going to be our hairline. So we're just coming down a little bit from the top, and now we're going to break that distance into thirds. So bear with me while I guesstimate my thirds here. Okay, so imagine that's my thirds. I think I'm going to need to adjust it. So there's my 1/3. You can see this middle one is just too big. So let me drop that down. so that's much closer. Okay, so I've got my thirds here. Now, what are the thirds representing? The first one on the bottom here is representing the chin to the bottom of the nose. So where that third is going to become the bottom of your nose. This next one is going to be, in general, the brow, the eyebrow. And like we said, this one here is going to be the hairline of our fun little Mr. Man that we're drawing. Okay, so now we're placing our generalized placement of the features. Fun fact, these thirds, so this third here that we just measured out, is also generally the distance from the eye to where the ear is starting on the head. Okay, now that depends on if you've placed your eye in the right location this way or that way, but we're not going to go into that at this point. So don't worry about it too much. Let's just mostly focus on these main proportions, especially if they're new to you. Okay, lastly, we need a mouth on our friendly fellow here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this distance that we've just found and we're going to divide it in half. Okay, there's a million different ways that people do this. If you Google facial proportions, you'll find different ideas. But this is a fairly standard accepted one, is that if you divide this in half, the bottom lip generally comes here. So the rest of the mouth is going to be up in here. Imagine that's going to be our bottom lip if it was someone wearing lipstick. They'd be colored. So this half, and again half, and that's going to be our bottom lip. And that's going to be eventually our chin. So there's a brief, quick and dirty overview of a canon of proportions for the face that's easy to remember. It serves, in my mind, it serves two purposes. So the first one is when you're inventing faces, you can use this canon of proportion to make sure you have something that's within the realm of possibility for a human. And the second purpose of a canon of proportion is it gives you sort of a jumping off point later on when you're working from a model. I often do stuff like I'll measure on the model where their eye comes in the head, knowing that statistically it's probably going to be in the middle, but on them it might be a little bit higher or might be a little bit lower. But it kind of gives me like a benchmark to base my observations of that individual off of. So it's helpful in both of those scenarios, both when you're making up figures from your imagination or when you're working from life with an actual individual you're trying to represent. My suggested exercise for this is to try and create at least 3 different faces using these exact same proportions but varying the features a little bit, so you have 3 different characters. And the reason for the repetition is that it will help it sort of get into your hand, get into your brain, and eventually it's going to become second nature. So when you start doing like quick sketches of faces, you might find that you actually do the proportions automagically because you've practiced them so much, or because you've just made that effort. So that's kind of the eventual goal, is that you won't have to spend that time measuring. It'll just sort of, boom, it'll just come out. Okay, so take a few minutes, practice those faces, and report back. I look forward to seeing your pictures.
Thanks for joining The Lone Sculptor. See you next time.